Ladies and gentlemen, when you stop reaching out, something subtle but powerful begins to shift inside a man's mind. At first, there is confusion. He notices the silence, even if he pretends not to. The absence of your messages creates a gap in his routine, a quiet space where your presence used to be. That gap makes him think, because silence forces awareness. He starts replaying past conversations, wondering why the dynamic changed, questioning whether he did something wrong or whether you finally saw something he overlooked. When silence appears, the mind is forced to notice what it once took for granted. When you stop reaching out, your absence becomes impossible to ignore because presence is often invisible until it is removed. A man may not immediately react outwardly, but internally his awareness sharpens. The routines he unconsciously relied on begin to break. The familiar notification, the predictable message, the emotional check in that anchored certain moments of his day no longer arrives. This disruption creates mental noise. Even if he is busy, even if he distracts himself, part of his mind keeps returning to the missing connection because humans are wired to notice change more than consistency. At first, he may downplay it. He tells himself it means nothing, that you are simply occupied, that the silence is temporary. But the mind keeps track. Each passing moment without contact reinforces the reality that something has shifted. Awareness grows not through dramatic realization, but through repetition. The longer the silence lasts, the louder it becomes. He starts noticing empty spaces where you used to exist emotionally. Moments of boredom, stress, or excitement that once involved you now feel incomplete. This is when awareness deepens into presence of thought. Silence removes emotional background noise. When communication is constant, there is little room for reflection. When it stops, reflection becomes unavoidable. His mind begins replaying interactions, analyzing tone, revisiting words, searching for clues he previously ignored. He becomes aware not just of your absence, but of your role, how you listened, how you responded, how you showed up. Awareness turns inward, and he begins to see the dynamic more clearly than when it was actively happening. This awareness is powerful because it is self-generated. No explanation, confrontation, or emotional plea is guiding it. His mind fills the gap on its own. Questions form naturally. Why did she stop? What changed? Did I miss something? These questions keep your presence alive mentally, even in physical silence. The mind tries to resolve uncertainty, and in doing so, it gives attention where attention was previously passive. Over time, awareness becomes emotional recognition. He doesn't just notice that you are gone, he notices how it feels that you are gone. The quiet becomes associated with a sense of loss, even if he cannot name it yet. Awareness is the first crack in emotional autopilot. It interrupts comfort and forces consciousness. Silence doesn't make him forget. It makes him notice, remember, and mentally reach toward what is no longer there. When uncertainty enters a man's mind, it unsettles the sense of control he may not even realize he depended on. When you stop reaching out, there is no clear explanation, no emotional closure, and no predictable pattern to rely on. This lack of clarity creates curiosity because the mind naturally seeks answers. He begins to wonder what the silence means, not because he wants drama, but because unresolved situations demand mental attention. The unknown becomes more powerful than certainty ever was. At first, curiosity shows up quietly. He checks his phone more often than usual, half expecting a message that doesn't arrive. He may replay the last interaction, searching for hidden meaning, questioning tone, timing, and words. Uncertainty invites interpretation, and interpretation keeps the mind engaged. Without clear signals from you, his imagination starts filling the gaps. The mind becomes active, constructing scenarios, possibilities, and explanations, all of which keep you mentally present even in your absence. As curiosity grows, it blends with emotional reflection. He begins asking not just what happened, but why it affects him. This is where awareness turns inward. He may compare how things felt before and how they feel now. The contrast creates emotional tension. When anything was consistent, it felt neutral. When it becomes uncertain, it becomes significant. The mind begins to attach value to what it might lose, because uncertainty activates fear and desire at the same time. Uncertainty also challenges ego. When someone stops reaching out, it removes reassurance. He can no longer assume interest, availability, or emotional access. This challenges his sense of importance in your life. Curiosity becomes personal. He wonders if you are pulling away, if you are emotionally detaching, or if someone else has taken his place. These thoughts are uncomfortable, but they are revealing. They force him to confront how much he cared about the connection, even if he never admitted it. As the silence continues, curiosity transforms into emotional processing. He starts recognizing patterns he once ignored, how much you initiated, how often you showed care, how easy it was to rely on your presence. Uncertainty strips away comfort and replaces it with awareness. He may feel drawn to reach out, not out of habit, but out of a need to restore clarity. The mind seeks resolution because unresolved emotional tension demands action or acceptance. Through uncertainty, emotional reflection deepens. He is no longer reacting to you, but to the absence of you. His thoughts become more focused, more intentional. Silence turns into a psychological mirror, showing him what the connection truly meant. Curiosity keeps pulling him back to that realization again and again. While distance enters the dynamic, the balance quietly begins to change. When you stop reaching out, you are no longer positioning yourself as the one seeking connection, approval, or reassurance. This absence of pursuit alters how a man perceives the situation because effort is a form of energy, and when that energy is withdrawn, its value becomes visible. The shift in power does not come from manipulation, but from self-restraint. You are no longer overextending emotionally, and that alone changes the tone of the connection. A man's mind often associates consistency with availability. When you were always present, always responding, always initiating, there was little reason to question your place. When that changes, so does perception. Distance introduces unpredictability, and unpredictability demands attention. He begins to sense that you are no longer centering your actions around him. That realization subtly repositions you in his mind. You are no longer someone who is simply there, but someone who chooses whether or not to be there. This is where self-worth becomes visible without being spoken. By not reaching out, you communicate boundaries without explanation. You demonstrate that your time, energy, and emotions are not unlimited. This sends a powerful signal because people instinctively respect what appears selective. When someone no longer gives freely, the mind assumes value. He may not consciously label it as self-worth, but he feels the difference. The dynamic no-L. Anger feels one-sided, and that imbalance forces reassessment. Distance also removes emotional dependency from your side of the equation. When you stop filling every gap, he is left to meet himself in the silence. He notices that you are not chasing, not correcting, not trying to hold things together. That absence of effort can feel unsettling because it suggests independence. Independence shifts power because it shows that your emotional stability does not rely on his validation or attention. As this awareness grows, his behavior often changes internally before it changes externally. He may feel a stronger pull to initiate, to test whether the connection is still accessible. This is not about control, but about restoring equilibrium. When someone feels less needed, they often work harder to feel wanted. Distance creates that paradox. By stepping back, you create space for him to step forward if he chooses to. The most important shift is how he views you. You are no longer defined by what you give, but by what you allow. The dynamic becomes one of choice rather than obligation. Power shifts toward the person who can remain grounded without chasing. Self-worth becomes evident through restraint, consistency with oneself, and emotional boundaries. Distance reveals value not through absence alone, but through the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you do not need to prove your place. When the fear of loss enters a man's mind, it changes how he experiences the connection. This fear does not always appear as panic or desperation. More often, it shows up as a quiet discomfort that lingers beneath the surface. When you stop reaching out, the certainty of your presence fades, and with it goes the assumption that you will always be there. This uncertainty activates a deeper emotional response because the human mind is wired to protect what it senses might be slipping away. At first, he may resist the feeling. He tells himself that nothing has changed, that he is unaffected, that the connection is still secure. But fear of loss does not need permission to exist. It grows in the background, influencing thoughts and emotions subtly. He begins to notice moments where your absence feels heavier than expected. Small reminders trigger a sense of missing, not just missing you, but missing the emotional comfort that came with your presence. This fear forces honesty. When the possibility of loss becomes real, emotions that were dormant begin to surface. He may realize that he valued the connection more than he admitted. Comfort often disguises attachment, and it is only when comfort is threatened that attachment becomes visible. The idea that you might emotionally detach, move on, or stop caring introduces vulnerability. Even men who struggle to express emotion internally feel this shift. Fear of loss also exposes priorities. He begins to question where you stand in his life and where he stands in yours. If he imagines life without your presence, the emotional reaction to that image tells him more than words ever could. This is where true feelings are revealed, not through conversation, but through internal response. The mind does not lie when faced with the idea of losing something meaningful. As the fear deepens, it can create an urge to act. He may feel drawn to reestablish contact, to seek reassurance, or to restore the connection to its previous state. This impulse is not always about love, but it is about significance. Loss threatens identity as much as attachment. Knowing that someone once prioritized him and now may not challenges his sense of importance. In this space, emotions become clearer. What once felt optional now feels valuable. What once felt familiar now feels irreplaceable. Fear strips away indifference and reveals emotional truth. Whether he chooses to confront that truth or avoid it depends on his emotional maturity. But the fear itself does its work quietly, reshaping how he perceives you, the connection, and his role within it. Loss, even the possibility of it, has a way of making feelings undeniable. When a man's response becomes visible, it reflects the reality of his intentions. When you stop reaching out, the silence acts as a mirror, showing not just what he feels, but what he prioritizes. Without your constant presence to fill the gaps, there is no longer a cushion for complacency. His choices, actions, and willingness to engage become more apparent because they are no longer prompted by your effort. The connection is stripped down to its essentials, and in that space, his true intentions emerge naturally. Initially, his response may be subtle. He might check in sporadically or show fleeting signs of interest. These small gestures are often revealing because they indicate whether the emotional pull is mutual or one-sided. When you consistently step back, his reaction, or lack thereof, speaks louder than any words could. It exposes whether he values the connection enough to bridge the gap on his own or whether he relied on your persistence to maintain engagement. This stage is less about conscious decision-making and more about instinctual behavior. The absence of your outreach forces him to evaluate priorities internally. Without the habitual reminders of your presence, he must decide whether to initiate, wait, or let the connection fade. These choices reveal alignment between words and actions. Someone who truly values the relationship will feel the imbalance and be motivated to restore it. Someone who does not will let silence continue, either out of indifference or because the connection was never a priority. Observing how he responds to distance gives clarity on his intentions without confrontation. As time progresses, emotional consistency becomes evident. His response patterns under your silence highlight his reliability, commitment, and level of care. If he seeks to reconnect thoughtfully, it indicates a willingness to invest in the relationship. If he remains passive or dismissive, it signals boundaries or limitations in his emotional capacity. This natural filtration process reveals not only what he wants, but also who he is willing to be when tested by absence. The ultimate revelation is clarity. When you stop reaching out, his behavior no longer competes with yours. It stands alone as an indicator of genuine interest. His responses, or lack thereof, show what he is ready to give, how much effort he values, and whether he is capable of maintaining a balanced connection. This truth cannot be fabricated or forced. because it arises in the absence of external prompting. Your silence transforms observation into insight,